Hey guys, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back at last to Tekton Zoo. We're adding these bad boys into the zoo today, but first, we're going to take a quick trip to the jungle because I just got a comment from one of you guys way back on the Pygmy Hippos episode telling me that I forgot to add a sign. I couldn't believe it, but I checked it and they were completely right. So, we decided that Pygmy Hippo Falls would be a nice name for the habitat. So thank you very much to Charlotting Vorsen for suggesting that. Let's get on to today's build for the Capybara. So you joined me about 3 weeks ago, I think. I decided to add a gift shop and an info kiosk to the entrance to South American Giants in an attempt to alleviate the zoo's continuing financial problems. So I started building a couple of little kiosks using some of the South American pieces to sit here just before you get to the giant anteater habitat and the implied agouti habitat. So I wanted these to be, rather than big buildings and hiding the in-game boxes away inside them, I decided to make little pods that were the same size as the in-game shops, but make them round so they didn't look like the little 4x4 boxes. I thought that would be a cool idea. And like I say, the zoo is still losing money, so I need as many gift shops and things like that as possible. And with the info kiosks, you also get the animal adoptions, which you can get quite a lot of money from. So I started building those. Happily, with the new update that's just come out, I don't know about you guys, but my performance is a lot better than it was. So I've just been able to increase the guest limits. So I think I've got 3,500 guests in the zoo now, rather than the 3,000 it was limited to. So I think that's going to go a long way to helping with the financial problems without affecting the performance of the game, because it's running so much smoother now. So that's really cool. So yeah, started building these just using the South American pieces really, but I wanted something that fitted in with the Machu Picchu vibe that we were going for, and also something small so that it can sit at the front where this is without really sort of distracting. The idea was that as you walk down the path up to South American Giants, all you're really looking at is the huge white concrete structure at the top, and then the terraces that come down from that, and until you get right up to them, you don't really notice these two buildings to either side of it. So I decided to make them pretty much the same on the outside, and then I just have a gift shop in the one on the left and an info kiosk in the one here. So I'm just syncing this sign in, and then I'm going to play around with the text color to make it look a bit more like the text has been carved or embossed into the wall rather than just a standard sign. I'm really happy with how that looked. And then we're going to work on the circular part of it. So again, using the South American pieces and the mud pillar trick, which I don't normally bother with, but I really needed it here. It just wasn't forming a perfect circle without it. So we delete all those, and then we've got a nice base here that we can work with and start copying this around. And combining this with the facade that I just built to get a whole building. So I'm going to put the facade back onto it now that we've got a nice circular structure in there, and we play around with it for a bit until we get it absolutely perfect. Put a roof on, and that's pretty much it for these little shop things. Lots of potential for the guests to spend money here, which is always good. We just put a path in. I spent a lot of time landscaping this, with it being the entrance. Obviously you want it to look really good, and there we have it. That is the finished entrance to South American Giants, or it was. And then they announced the wetlands pack, and with it containing Capybara, I mean, how can you build a South American Giants area without having the world's largest rodent in it? So instantly my plans changed. I deleted the shop on the left and worked on turning the implied agouti habitat that we built in the last episode into a capybara habitat. And I got to admit, I got pretty lucky with this, with the little bit of land that I had where the shop was and the implied agouti exhibit that was already there. And obviously it's always better to have an exhibit that's actually got an animal in it. I managed to combine the two of them together and got just enough space for a pair of capybara and some babies, which was nice. So I'm just reconfiguring the boundaries of the habitat here with some of these rocks that we created, and then I'm going to put the barriers in. So I'm going to use low fences, same as I did for the giant anteaters, so it looks the same. You can get them really low with the capybara. I guess they're not big on jumping, so the adults at least will be able to see over the fence, and the kids will be able to see through the fence. So it should be really good viewing, and the habitat goes right up to it with the rocks on the floor to prevent people from sticking their fingers through the fences, getting them as low as I can, and then we'll move on to actually building the habitat itself. So it's not going to be a giant walk-through habitat like I did in the wetland zoo. This is going to be more of a traditional zoo habitat where you just look through the barriers at the animals. I'm going to use these bits of rocks just to make it look like this wall has sort of fallen down rather than just ending. And then I'm going to use the new flatten to terrace brush to make this pool. I don't know about you guys, but I've been getting some weird results with the terrain tool since this new update. In the wetlands yesterday, I used the flatten to terrain brush to build a little sort of pond just outside the zoo for some scenery. It took me about 3 seconds. It worked absolutely brilliantly, and was a really cool new way of doing things that's way easier than it used to be. For this habitat, I really struggled. I think in the end, I just did this the old-fashioned way. I just couldn't get the terrace brush to work properly, which was weird. I also had something really weird in the shelter, which I'm going to build in a minute, where there was just a piece of terrain that the flatten terrain tool could not remove, regardless of what I did. I was thinking maybe there was some sort of enrichment item that I'd lost or something was going wrong, but I changed the camera so that I could fly through the terrain, checked underneath it, there was nothing there. There was absolutely no reason that I could see that this terrain wasn't editable, but it just wouldn't let me edit it. So that was weird. Let me know in the comments if you've been having similar issues, and maybe we can report them to Frontier. But yeah, this is the shelter that I mentioned. I noticed when I was researching Machu Picchu to make the South American Giants area that there are houses or what I assume are houses in Machu Picchu that have pretty much the same design that we use to build houses today, with these gabled roofs, which I'm not sure why I was so surprised by that, but when you're looking at things that old with, all this amazing architecture and all these circular buildings and terraces going up the side of a mountain, it's kind of surprising to see something that looks a bit like, a barn. But I guess these designs are just designs that work. So if they worked well for the Incas, then they will work well for a French farmhouse in the 18th century or a farm today. Just reconfiguring the barriers around the back of the shelter. This is going to get a little bit more room in for the capybaras because we are pretty tight on space. And then I'm going to redo the ground in here with some dirt. This is the bit where I had the issue with the terrain that just wouldn't move. You'll see that in a second. So I struggled with that for a long time. In the end, I just gave up and covered it up with some straw. I know there's been a few issues with the new update, so I'm sure Frontier will be issuing a hotfix very soon. I think people have been having crashing as well as terrain issues, although luckily I haven't had any crashes. I'm going to put one of the new hot water taps in here. I really like this new enrichment item. Put a floor in, and then just a sort of grill so that the water has somewhere to go. Make sure the capybara have something to do when they're inside, which they'll probably be for a decent amount of time, seeing as the zoo is in England. Put something that I always like to do, which is put one of the leaf enrichment items right in front of the door so that they walk through that. Get a sign, some more enrichment. We'll cover up the bottom of the pond with some concrete. I'm using, like I say, the new mist features on this pond, which I really like. That saves you a load of time just being able to turn that on rather than having to hide loads of misters underneath the concrete. Put a bit of moss in to bring it to life, and that is pretty much the capybara habitat done. So thank you so much for watching as always. I'll be back next week with a new episode of either the Wetlands or Tekton Zoo. I would imagine it'll be the Wetlands. Enjoy the cinematics, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.